Menopause is a natural milestone in a woman's life. There is not something wrong with us as women. This is what we're supposed to do. Our bodies are supposed to go through menopause.
So those symptoms that you have, maybe it's a hot flash or the mood, what is your body telling you? What do I really need?
And just because you may go off the rails one day doesn't necessarily mean you have to go on a medication, because there are tools, which we're going to talk about today, that, we can try and implement so that maybe if you don't want to go on medication, you don't have to.
The one area is just with food. And there's these, phytoestrogen rich foods that can be super helpful. And this includes soy, flaxseed, and lentils, and not be feeding it the foods that it doesn't like. So the sugar and the processed foods and the alcohol have a big impact. I think a lot of doctors, if you go in and you have a bunch of these symptoms, they could just say, here's a prescription for an antidepressant when it's your hormones. So stand your ground and do a little bit of research before you go see your healthcare professional.
Can we just talk about hormone replacement therapy? Because I know this is a big issue for a lot of people. Welcome to the Art of Living Well podcast, where we empower you to take charge of your health and happiness. We're Marnie
and Stephanie,
board-certified integrative health practitioners, holistic wellness coaches, and passionate explorers of all things mind, body, and soul.
Each week, we bring you expert insights, real-life stories, and practical tools to help you bridge the gap between where you are now and where you truly want to be. From longevity and nutrition to mindset, movement, and healing, we dive deep to uncover the root causes of wellness and vitality.
Join us and our growing community as we explore what it really means to create your art of living well in a way that's authentic, sustainable, and uniquely yours.
Hello, welcome back to the Art of Living Well podcast. It's Marnie and Stephanie today, and we are going to talk to you guys a little bit about a topic that we know that so many of you can relate to, and that's perimenopause, early menopause, and those symptoms that we haven't experienced. You certainly have been talking to your girlfriends or others about them and probably dreading them. But today we're going to empower you to learn a little bit more about how you can potentially embrace some more natural remedies in addition to anything else that you want to do, and really empower you with your healthcare providers and what kind of questions that you can be asking, and tune in and listen to your own body and what feels good for you in this phase of life. So yeah, with that, let's dive in, Marnie.
Well, and also just that menopause is a natural milestone in a woman's life. There is not something wrong with us as women. This is what we're supposed to do. Our bodies are supposed to go through menopause. It's
It's just like getting our first period. This is just the end of that cycle to some degree.
It's not something that you need to endure. You don't need to rush into medications necessarily. And just the idea of, like Stephanie said, empowering you and exploring options that work for you, because it's all about your own bio-individuality, which we talk about so much, and figuring out what works well for you. And just because you may go off the rails one day doesn't necessarily mean you have to go on a medication, because there are tools, which we're going to talk about today, that, we can try and implement so that maybe if you don't want to go on medication, you don't have to.
Yeah. And we're going to touch on different experts in the field that Marnie and I, have either studied under, like Dr. Stephen Cabral, or we've read a lot and listened to, like Dr. Sarah Gottfried and Lisa Mosconi, who have done a lot of research, and there's a lot of science behind this. And just know that you have options and that you don't have to feel like you're on an emotional roller coaster every day, or dealing with the hot flashes and other some of those more unpleasant symptoms. This can be a time of empowering yourself. And as you kind of look beyond for those next few years, and there could be some good that comes out of it at the end of the day, right? So part of this is mindset shift, and we're going to talk a little bit about that.
Well, and also just a reminder, we're not licensed medical professionals. This podcast is for educational purposes only. So if you have questions about what we're discussing today, please go talk with your doctor. Just one clarification that I want to make is there is the phrase early menopause, right? Which is different from perimenopause, because early menopause occurs before the age of 45. But if we're talking about perimenopause, that is the transition period leading up to menopause and typically happens, I guess, after 45.
Right. And I think the important point to make with the early menopause is just that if you are in that camp where it is happening earlier, then time is of the essence. So there may be things that you want to consider that you wouldn't necessarily have to consider if you didn't reach perimenopause until your 50s. And a lot of it has to do with your bone health and getting DEXA scans. And hopefully you don't have, osteopenia or osteoporosis. But if you do, then those are separate conversations that you need to be having with your healthcare providers. But it does
Absolutely.
happen in about 5% of women. So, just know that you're not alone if this is you.
And if you're curious about what perimenopause actually is, because I just remember hearing that term so much when I was younger, and I didn't really understand it until I was getting closer to the age. But it's really about your hormones kind of fluctuating and going crazy as you're leading into menopause, which menopause defined as when you no longer have a period for a period of over 12 months. You don't get your
And
period anymore.
perimenopause can last for a long time. I mean, for some people, it can be years.
Yeah. Yep. And
And your doctor can check that based on your FSH, which is a blood test that you can run, your follicular stimulating hormone.
but I will say, like, I even remember growing up, I don't know about you, Stephanie, but people would say, "Oh, well, if your mom had terrible menopause symptoms, then you're gonna have terrible menopause symptoms." And I remember my mom did have, like, her menopause was terrible, her moods, her hot flashes, like, all of the stuff that you hear about. And I feel like I'm starting from a place of, I know so much more about health and wellness than she did at this age, and I'm taking so many supplements that I feel like although my periods are skipping and my hormones are fluctuating, I'm not having hot flashes. And I feel like a lot of the symptoms that you hear about, I'm really not having. Now, am I having nothing? No, I've definitely had some moments where I feel really angry. I don't know if you've had this, Stephanie. And it's
Yeah.
mostly directed at Jordan, which is not good. And it's like, I almost can have this conversation with myself like, what is wrong with me? Like, but yet I can't control my anger. And then, like, when it passes, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I am totally going off the rails here.
Well, that is so common. It's funny. I was literally just 2 days ago having a conversation with a client who had the same situation. She's like, "It's the anger." She's like, and I can almost see myself in the moment, like, or 2 seconds after, gosh, I am being so mean to my husband. And it's this like emotional, up and down roller coaster. And so it's funny that we're having this conversation today because that is very common, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I was running with a friend the other day and we were talking about it, and I was like, "I didn't think that would ever happen to me." Like, I feel like I'm pretty even keeled and like it's like you can see yourself, but you can't stop. It's the weirdest feeling ever. Thankfully, it's only happened to me twice, and I hope it doesn't happen anymore because I don't like it.
Just talk to Jordan, explain to
I mean, I
Jordan or
did.
whoever.
I
And
said I feel like a
I'm sure
demon
he's,
is taking over for a
yeah.
few minutes and then like
And they're just probably happy that it's not happening to them. So,
yes, right.
they'll just walk away and let it pass and be fine with
Yeah.
it, right?
The other
But
thing I have noticed, I'll just say, is like I have noticed some brain fog. Brain fog isn't the right word. Some memory lapses. It's
yes.
not, I don't think that's really brain fog. I've noticed like where I'm trying to think of something to tell someone, and I'm like, oh my gosh, the word has
Yeah.
completely escaped me. Like, where is that word
I
that I
feel like that's
use
been
all the
happening to me for a
time?
long time.
It's so strange.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, what's happening to my brain?
Well, and that's where, and we'll dive into this, but I think back to the conversation we had with Dr. Kay Linker just a month or so ago. And there are things that you can start doing at a young age to be focused on your cognitive abilities, right? Because your shift in hormone is impacting your brain. And that's where Lisa Mosconi does a ton of research and she has a book and we'll link all that up. She's amazing. If anyone out there has any connection or relationship to her, we would love to have her on our podcast.
And her book is The
Um,
Menopause Brain, by the way,
yeah.
the name of the
So
book.
it's a real thing.
Mhm.
And I think that's part of it. Like when you're having conversations with girlfriends, because Marnie and I are both in at this phase of life, is everyone's talking about these symptoms. And so we're normalizing it. We are talking about it a little bit more. And even on social media, there's way more discussion. But I think there's some defaults. I think there's some just, okay, just take HRT or just accept that you have to have this menopause belly or whatever that terminology is. And we want to really get into like, okay, what's the root cause and come at it a little bit more from a functional medicine lens, which again, those three specialists that I mentioned earlier, that's their approach. And it's also very multifaceted. There's no band-aid solution. There's no just going on an estradiol patch and hoping everything goes away and your symptoms are all, have all resolved themselves, and really tuning in and listening to your body.
Well, and I feel like as we talk about different conditions or life phases or things that a person is working on in their holistic health and wellness, and we talk about how can we approach this from the functional medicine lens, you're going to see that a lot of these things are very similar. So if we can continue to incorporate anti-stress types of things into our lives and, whole foods and better sleep and opening up our detox pathways and all of these things that Stephanie and I have been talking about for the past 5 years, they're really gonna hopefully help you reduce your symptoms of perimenopause.
Absolutely.
And I feel like I'm a testament to that. Like, I feel like I have not had one hot flash. I'm 52 years old. I have not had a hot flash. I feel like I'm out at dinner with girlfriends and they're like, "Oh, I'm so hot. I'm overheating. I can't wear a sweater anymore." And I'm like, "Okay, I'm still cold over here."
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right. So some of these things we're going to talk about aren't rocket science, and it's just lifestyle changes that honestly would benefit everyone or most people. But then there's some small tweaks and things that specifically related to women's hormones that you can do. And, the one area is just with food. And there's these, phytoestrogen rich foods that can be super helpful. And this includes soy, which I know sometimes soy gets a bad rap. Always make sure that it's organic, but like flaxseed and lentils. And, those are really important from as you get into those menopausal years to eat. And I think that Anna Kabaka, she's a doctor or DO, and she has a whole thing about this menopause reset diet. And honestly, it's very similar to a Mediterranean diet, which Marnie and I have talked about on so many occasions. And really, that's the basis for even the Vitality Reboot and that detox that we run, a lot of similar foods. So, what can you do? It's kind of similar to like gut health, right? You want to be like providing a good environment for your hormones in this case to thrive and to function and not be feeding it the foods that it doesn't like. So, the sugar and the processed foods and the alcohol have a big impact, right? Also from a gut health, but also from your cognitive function and your hormones.
And I mean, we can keep this really simple, right? Eat a rainbow of colors, mostly plants and fruits, limit the processed foods, limit the alcohol, maybe add a few more isoflavones like Stephanie mentioned, the lentils and some soy and some flax seeds, and you're well on your way from a nutrition standpoint.
Exactly. Get all those healthy fats that you need, prioritize your protein, and that can have a big impact on how you feel each day. And not only just, you may still have hot flashes, right? But it's like your energy and your mood, because that's something like Marnie mentioned, like with the anger, right? And just some of like the emotional dysregulation that happens and getting a good night's sleep.
Mhm.
We all
And
know when we get a good night's sleep, we feel so much better in the morning.
And I know we talked about creatine recently, and that is coming out more and more connected to our brain health. And I had taken it for a while and was feeling kind of bloated from it. So I stopped taking it. Now I'm taking it again because I feel like it's something that's worth taking the more I read about it.
I agree because there is a lot of research about with brain health and creatine. And we'll link up Dr. K's episode.
And if you're curious on your actual hormone levels as you're going through this process, we test that. We do functional medicine lab testing and we can test your hormone levels so you can know exactly where you're at in this process because we're not saying that there's something wrong with hormone replacement therapy or estradiol or adding what you need to add. We just want you to be completely knowledgeable about your own body and your own self. And so that when you're making decisions, you're not making decisions because your doctor's pressuring you to or telling you this is the way to do it. I put all my patients on X, Y, and Z, but it's coming from a place of, okay, I feel like I really need to do this for myself.
Well, and I think it's important because I think a lot of doctors, if you go in and you have a bunch of these symptoms and then you talk about your mood and maybe you're feeling a little sad, I mean, one, they could just say, here's a prescription for, an antidepressant when it's your hormones. So be mindful of that before you walk in. And actually, that's what my client said the other day. She's like, I don't know. I don't want to just go, I don't even want to go to the doctor just yet. I want to do more research and be knowledgeable before I go see my doctor because I don't want her to put me on an SSRI because I know I don't need that. So stand your ground and do a little bit of research before you go see your healthcare professional. Obviously, take their advice, listen to them, but know that there are other options in combination with what they may suggest. And two, I think it's really important to know your numbers before you decide to go on a hormone replacement therapy. Have a baseline and get those checked multiple times a year. I know for myself, I get my hormone levels checked more than once a year. And actually just went yesterday and I said, I was having a physical and I said, I want to add all these hormones to it because it's not part of the baseline physical. You have to ask.
And did they do it for you? Because a lot of MDs will not test your hormone levels.
So they actually questioned me because they could see that I had them tested in like April. So it's been just about 6 months. And I said, hey, I am on an HRT for some other reasons. I do have osteoporosis. So I want these tested again. And they're like, okay, you may have to pay for them. I'm like, well, fine, but you're drawing blood. So please test them now. So I don't have to go back and do this again.
And they
So,
did.
and they will, yes, they did.
That's
But you
good.
you have to advocate for yourself.
Yep. My internist will not do it. Like they said, their practice is to not do it. Thankfully, you and I can do it ourselves, so
Right. I don't understand that.
but along with nutrition, which we talked about, strength training, Stephanie mentioned that she has osteopenia, right?
No, porosis. Yeah.
Porosis. So, like, as our hormone levels are dropping and fluctuating, our bodies become so sensitive to getting osteoporosis. And so that strength training becomes incredibly important for our bones and sitting up straight and not walking hunched over and not breaking our hips and all of those things as we're hitting menopause. And then the cardio piece of exercise is also really important because that helps with our energy levels and our mood. And I'm just so much happier when I'm working out.
Yeah, and, I feel like we've talked about so many of these things
Yes,
individually, like the VO2 max, which we dropped that episode last week, more on the brain health, and then the episode that we did on bone health.
right.
So we'll make sure we listen because those kinda give you a little bit deeper dive into each of those areas.
And it's all
And then what
connected, right? I mean,
Yes,
that's the whole beauty of our bodies is that everything is connected. These are not individual systems running separately. They are running together. And so when we bring all of these pieces together, we're in a flow state.
yes, it's what our body needs.
Yeah.
It's literally what our body needs and what it's asking us to do. Like, so those symptoms that you have, maybe it's a hot flash or the moods, what is your body telling you?
Yes.
And so look at it as how can we reframe how we think about menopause and go in there and be like, what do I really need? And, it's going to take it's a little bit of a science experiment. So I'm not saying this is easy, but take those symptoms as a sign of my body needs something. I need to tweak something. I need to do it a little bit differently because I'm in this new phase of life and my estrogen's dropping. What do I need?
Well,
Are you loving this conversation and want even more ways to live your happiest, healthiest, and most authentic life? Then we'd love for you to join our growing community on Substack. When you subscribe, you'll get bonus content and behind the scenes insights from us. Plus, you'll be the first to know about our upcoming programs and events. Your support helps us keep bringing inspiring guests and impactful conversations straight to you each week. So head to the link in our show notes, sign up today, and let's continue this journey together to create the art of living well.
and I was just thinking about the girlfriend or the woman who's like, I'm gaining all this weight around my belly and there's nothing I can do about it. And then I would want to say, well, did you eat a sleeve of Oreos? Maybe you did, right? Maybe you could do that at 25. And now that you're 50, it might not be working for you, right? Because metabolism does slow down. And this is where the nutrition piece becomes even more important. And I'm not saying to withhold all tasty treats from your life, but maybe you have to have a new level of mindfulness that you didn't have when you were younger.
Exactly. And again, it goes back to how our bodies work and function. And sometimes people can eat certain way up until the day they die and be fine, and others kind of struggle when they get to this midlife point with the mental belly and all the other things. So let's dive in. I think we want to talk a little bit about kind of the mental side of this and reframing. But before we do that, let's talk a little bit about supplements, because I also think that the market, because we're talking more about menopause and women's health and hormones, which is excellent. You're seeing a lot more supplements out there and a lot more brands. I feel like I always have people asking me, have you heard of this? Have you heard of that? I mean, I can't keep up with the different brands of supplements. And sometimes it's a bit of a marketing scheme or game. It's a marketing game where they bundle up a few different things together, package it up, and sell it at a premium. And then they market you on Instagram because it's menopause. And I've even had my health practitioner who I see regularly, and I'll mention a supplement, and it may be a blend of a few different things. And she'll look it up, and we're online in the chat, and she'll look up all the ingredients, and then she'll look at the price, and she's like, "You know what? All you need is ashwagandha. Just go buy the ashwagandha and skip the other stuff, because you're already getting that here, you're getting that there, and you don't need to pay a premium." So, I mean, that's where if you have questions and you're wondering, are these supplements that I should be taking based on my symptoms or based on what you've like seen or read, like reach out to us, because like Marnie said, we do the at-home functional medicine lab testing. We can test your levels, and we can do health supplement consultations based on the actual, the blood work that you would do, and find out, and based on your symptoms, what may be beneficial.
Absolutely. And we could, sit here and list a bunch of different supplements. I don't know if that's beneficial or not, because it really depends on what you're already taking. And we want to look at an entire landscape of supplements, because I could say, oh, go take the ashwagandha, like Stephanie mentioned, or the rhodiola or whatever. But I don't know what else you're taking right now. So that's where the supplement consults become handy.
Yeah, and just know that supplements aren't a quick fix. So, if you have hot flashes and you're like, "Well, I heard that black cohosh can help with that." Well, it may, but it also could be like, are you eating and drinking too close to bed? Or, are you not staying hydrated throughout the day? Or, there are other pieces. And so it really requires a conversation, I guess. But omega 3s are also really important for brain health. I'll just put a plug in for that.
Yes, and the vitamin D is super important, and the
Yes.
magnesium, and these are staples that, like, a person should be taking, in my
Most
opinion,
people. Yeah.
every day. So, but then there's all these adaptogens and other things that we can add, that we can layer in, specifically related to, menopause symptoms, and that's something that I think Stephanie and I would wanna look at the whole picture, the whole landscape of what you're currently taking before advising on that. Thinking about, mentally, what can a person do if they're experiencing menopause symptoms? Like, I'm thinking back to myself when I have my anger issues, like how can I reframe whatever's going on in my mind so that I can get control of what's going on inside? And one thing that kinda came up was cognitive behavioral therapy, which I thought was super interesting, because it's really just a way to track, your thoughts and your emotions and your behaviors, and reframe things. And I think it's super helpful, and it's always important if you're angry, right, to take a step back and think about, maybe you don't even need to think about in that moment, like, what's going on, but just, like, take 3 deep breaths, or how can I do this differently right now? So basically that you're trying to teach yourself healthier ways to cope with certain symptoms you're having, whether it's, stress or anger or hot flashes, how can you reframe something?
Well, and I think part of it is, though, sometimes I don't wanna say irrational, because I don't really love that word, but, like, you have these irrational thoughts, meaning that if you took a step back and you asked yourself, like in that case, Marnie, where you're talking about the conversation you have with Jordan, like, is this, and this, by this, I mean the thought, is this thought true? Is it really true? Because a lot of times we get ourselves all worked up, or like the emotion, especially when your hormones are, fluctuating like crazy. And we just get ourselves into like this emotional, like roller coaster and this tizzy. And then when you think about it, like after the fact, you're like, well, that was kind of silly. Like, Why did I get angry at my husband or whatever it is? And so sometimes it's like we're just in this like downward spiral and maybe you're experiencing the hot flashes and you're not sleeping and then you're crabby and then you're not able to work out and then you just want to eat, junk food all day or whatever, right? So how can you like step back from that and kind of do, a little bit of inner work and come up with like just being aware of the situation is super helpful, just that own awareness.
And even how can you separate yourself from the thought,
Mhm.
the worry, the anger, whatever it is? Like, you are
You are
not
not your
that,
thoughts.
right? And I couldn't even tell you what I was like. This was a couple months ago. I don't even remember what it was about. Like, I have
Yeah,
no recollection
of
whatsoever.
course,
Clearly, it
because yeah,
wasn't anything. It was probably like something about taking out the garbage or like not
yeah,
really, but something stupid that like
right.
just yeah. I think this is really hard to do, right? And there are licensed therapists that work with people on cognitive behavioral therapy, but what can we all do on our own? You could just try and separate yourself, like I mentioned before, from the thought, the worry, the anger, or take some breaths or to pull yourself back from the situation. Like even just doing that little thing can make a difference.
Yeah, and I think you said something powerful, just breath.
Mhm.
Just stepping away from the situation and taking some deep breaths. Get out, get outside for a few minutes,
Grounding your feet
breathe some
into
fresh
the
air.
earth. Like,
Yeah,
that alone, hug a tree. I know that sounds
yeah,
silly, but every time I, like, get close to a tree or hug a tree, I just feel calmer.
yeah, it's so grounding.
Or touch a tree even with your
Mhm.
hand.
Yeah. Well, there's just a lot of wisdom I find in a
Mhm.
tree. It's
Yes.
been around a lot longer than we have,
Yep.
and there's something very calming. So, yeah, maybe that's one of the actions is everyone should go out and hug a tree. I'm looking at my tree right
I
now.
am too. I'm looking at it and
Yeah.
I'm like, "Oh, thank you for being you."
Yeah. And how can you just reframe the thought? Like whether it's like the anger or, being frustrated about what you said, taking out the garbage or something,
Yep.
I get to take out the garbage.
Or if you're a woman who feels like you have to do everything, because a lot of us feel like that, right? Like we do a lot. Maybe I get to do all of this. Think about the women in other places around the world that would do anything to be in our shoes, right?
Yes. I get to drive my children back
Right.
and forth to their activities.
Just trying to reframe whatever it is going on in your mind. Even just trying to choose one thing of all these things we talked about, I feel like we bombard our audience sometimes with all these different things a person can do, but just choose one and see if it makes a difference in your life.
So what happens for someone, maybe do like an example. Like I can just picture you wake up in the middle of the night, you have hot flashes, or you just can't sleep because, or maybe you wake up in the night to go to the bathroom, then you can't fall back to sleep and you have to be up at a certain time. You have work commitments, family commitments, whatever. Like what can you do in that moment? What do you have control over to help yourself either one, get back to sleep or just deal with the fact that you're probably not going to get the best night's sleep? And how are you going to cope and manage in the morning?
I think that you have to reframe instead of saying, "Oh my gosh, I'm so exhausted. I slept terribly. I'm going to have such a tomorrow's going to be a disaster." Instead, maybe you say, "I've been through this before. It happens sometimes, and I'm gonna get through the day just fine. It might not be the best day ever, but I'm still gonna get through the day. My body knows how to reset. This will pass." So you're taking this idea of instead of fueling yourself with all this anxiousness and anxiety, you're turning it into a more positive experience.
Absolutely. Because at the end of the day, there's not a whole lot you can do. I mean, yes, there's some things you can do to help yourself go back to sleep, but at the very least, you can have some more positive thoughts that will help you get through that little rough patch, and it's not going to last forever, right?
So I know we have to start to wrap up this conversation, but can we just talk about hormone replacement therapy? Because I
Yes,
know this is a big issue for a lot of people. And I don't even know what my thoughts are on it, to be honest with you. I believe it's very individualized. I've heard people in both camps, with very strong opinions. And it's a confusing topic.
it is. And so, I've personally had to go through this thought process, and I've had doctors who wanted to prescribe it to me a long time ago, and I said, "I really wanna focus on getting my period back naturally." It wasn't for menopause, and it became bone health, and, once you sometimes exhaust all these other options and maybe you do need it, and I'm just not someone that wants to, like, default to the pill. I wanna do other things, other more holistic, I guess, if you will, remedies, and I've had, people explain it to me differently because then there's some people talk about bioidentical hormones and, like, does that mean? And there's compounding pharmacies and regular pharmacies, and at the end of the day, like, there are some people that may need that bioidentical hormone, but there's not actually a big difference between that and if you get something from your regular pharmacy, like, a lot of women have the estradiol patch. The bioidentical just, like, perfectly replicates that's produced by a woman's body, and there's some people that may need that more than others based on things going on. And there's some research that suggests that that's better, and then there's other research that says, maybe those compounded pharmacies are prescribing it unreliable way.
So it's
So I think it's
confusing, right?
it's
It's
very
confusing,
confusing.
and it's important to discuss with your doctor or a trusted provider, and it's important to do your own research and really come up with your opinions because the research is still out there, right? It's not
Yeah.
they
I
don't
mean, the good
know
thing
all
is
the
they're
answers yet, but they're
right.
looking into it.
And there were, like, scares with cancer, and there were some studies that were done with women and
Yes.
getting breast cancer, and so but then, Lisa Mosconi's book does a good job of, unpacking this, so maybe that's a good read for someone out there who's considering it or has been on it, and it just depends on what your symptoms are and where you're at and, your comfort level.
But the
Um
the bottom line is you are not alone.
Mm-mm.
Menopause is obviously common. It's happening to all of us at one point or another, right? So we're all kind of going through it together. I love that people are talking about it so much more. Like I feel like it was very taboo when our parents were going through it or our moms were going through it, I should say. Although our dads were going through it too. And there used to be all these like dad jokes about it, right? But you're not doing anything wrong.
No,
This is
no.
very normal.
Just know that
And
there's lots of options.
any small little shifts you can do in your own health and wellness when it comes to nutrition and exercise and sleep and, cognitive therapy, all the things, it all makes a difference.
And, thinking about like you talked about like your mom, right, Marnie? Well, think about like our for those of you who are parents out there of girls, like you want them to have these good tools and lifestyle habits now when they're young. So then hopefully when they start to reach the perimenopause age, their symptoms are mitigated quite a bit because their body is already sort of working optimally and hopefully their hormones are, somewhat more regulated and they just and if they're not, then they have other resources and tools to go to.
Yep. Or even if you have daughters who are having heavy or bad periods, like what are some things you can do? I mean, I think the functional medicine perspective is very similar, right? Like these are some things you can do to mitigate some of those cramps and issues that young girls are having.
Those cramps when they're severe, and they're obviously there's gonna be, just the normal. But for anyone out there that is experiencing really severe PMS symptoms or your daughters are experiencing those symptoms, that's not normal necessarily. And it is your body's way of trying to communicate that something is a bit off. And that's where getting some testing done and trying different remedies could be very helpful.
So, anyway, if you're curious about your own hormone levels, come test with us.
Yeah.
Join our Substack, which we have really changed up a bit recently, and we're really excited about it. We're sharing a lot more personal stories in it. So please sign up for that, and we'll slide into your inbox regularly.
Yeah, and one plug I wanna make, and I know we will have just finished our fall Vitality reboot when this episode drops, but join our Vitality reboot. We actually have it quarterly, but we do have a, like, sort of do it on your own without the group, and you still have Marty and I to support you, but that is such a great way, even though it's focused on the liver and those detox pathways, that's also gonna help your body detox excess estrogen, which part of, the hormonal balances and dysregulation, I guess, comes from the food that we eat also and the products we put on our skin and other toxins. So it can only help you. It's also really just focused on clean eating, which again will benefit you in the perimenopause or early menopause years.
And I feel like the amount of alumni that we have coming back over and over again to do this Vitality reboot with us is such a testament to how they feel while they're on the program and what they learn from the program. So our next group one is going to be in January, but you can do it on your own through us at any time and we'll support you along the way. And thanks for tuning in.
Thank you for tuning in to the Art of Living Well podcast. If today's episode inspired you, please subscribe, share, and leave us a review. It helps more people discover our show.
And if you're ready to take your health and happiness to the next level, we would love to support you. Whether it's through our transformative group programs, personalized coaching, or functional medicine lab testing, we help uncover the root causes of your health challenges and unlock your vitality.
Visit www.theartoflivingwell.us to learn more and book a free discovery call. Until next time, keep creating your art of living well.